Single biker stops to help a stranded CEO. Her secret reason leaves him in tears. The Arizona sun was sinking behind the mountains when Marcus Cole spotted the black Mercedes on the shoulder of Highway 89. Steam rose from beneath the hood like a white flag of surrender, and beside it stood a woman in a tailored suit, her phone pressed to her ear, frustration carved into every line of her face. Marcus eased off the throttle of his Harley-Davidson, the engine settling into a low rumble as he pulled onto the gravel behind the disabled vehicle. He had been riding for 6 hours straight, heading nowhere in particular, just trying to outrun the silence that had followed him since his wife's passing 3 years ago. But something about this scene made him stop. Maybe it was the way the woman's shoulders slumped when she ended her call. Maybe it was the fact that they were 30 miles from the nearest town, and darkness was coming fast. Or maybe it was simply the code he had lived by for 52 years. You help people when they need it, no questions asked. Marcus removed his helmet and hung it on the handlebar. His salt and pepper beard caught the last rays of sunlight as he approached the Mercedes. The woman turned, and for a moment, her expression shifted from hope to something that looked almost like fear. He understood. He was 6'3", 240 pounds of leather and denim, with tattoos covering both arms and a face weathered by decades of hard living. He had seen that look before, the quick calculation people made when they encountered someone like him. "Car trouble?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. The woman nodded slowly. "The engine just died. No warning lights, nothing. One moment I was driving, the next..." She gestured helplessly at the smoking hood. "Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. Marcus lifted the hood and peered inside. The problem was immediately obvious: a cracked radiator hose. Coolant had sprayed across the engine block, and the temperature gauge must have spiked before she even noticed. "Radiator hose," he said. "You're not driving this anywhere tonight." The woman closed her eyes and let out a long breath. Of course this happens today of all days." Marcus straightened up and wiped his hands on his jeans. "You got someone coming to help?" "The tow company said 2 hours minimum, and I've already missed..." She stopped herself, shaking her head. "It doesn't matter now." But Marcus could see that it did matter. Whatever she had missed was tearing her apart inside. He had spent enough years reading people to recognize the particular kind of pain that comes from failing someone you love. "I'm Marcus," he said, extending his hand. She looked at it for a moment before accepting. Her grip was firm despite the trembling in her fingers. Victoria Chen." "Well, Victoria Chen, I've got a toolbox on my bike and about 30 years of mechanical experience. Can't fix that hose permanently, but I might be able to patch it enough to get you to the next town. There's a garage in Sedona that owes me a favor." Victoria's eyebrows rose. "You would do that? For a stranger?" Marcus shrugged. "World's got enough people who drive past. Figure I'd rather be one who stops." He walked back to his Harley and retrieved a small toolkit from one of the saddlebags. As he worked on the engine, Victoria stood nearby, arms crossed against the cooling evening air. She had removed her suit jacket, revealing a silk blouse that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Everything about her screamed wealth and power, from the diamond studs in her ears to the way she carried herself, like someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of people. Yet here she was, stranded on a desert highway, utterly dependent on a stranger's kindness. "What do you do?" Marcus asked as he wrapped electrical tape around the cracked hose. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it would hold long enough. "I run a company, tech sector. We develop software for hospitals. Important work. It pays the bills." Her voice was flat, dismissive. Marcus glanced up at her. "You don't sound too happy about it." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its professional edge. "I built that company from nothing. 18 years ago, I was coding in my garage, living off instant noodles and hope. Now we have 2,000 employees and contracts with hospitals across the country. And somehow, in the middle of all that success, I forgot why I started in the first place." "Why did you start?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the edge of the highway and looked out at the desert, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Marcus continued his work, giving her the space she clearly needed. "My mother," she finally said. "She was diagnosed with cancer when I was 19. The hospital made a medication error during her treatment." Wrong dosage, wrong time. It didn't kill her, but it set back her recovery by months. She spent an extra 3 weeks in that hospital, in pain, because someone entered the wrong number into a computer system that should have caught the mistake. Marcus set down his tools and stood up. "I'm sorry." She survived, beat the cancer, lived another 20 years, but I never forgot how close we came to losing her because of a preventable error. That's why I started MedSafe Systems. I wanted to build software that would make those mistakes impossible, and for a long time, that's exactly what we did. What changed? Victoria turned back to face him. In the fading light, he could see tears glistening in her eyes. "I did. I got so focused on growth, on market share, on beating the competition, that I stopped thinking about the patients. I started thinking about them as numbers. Revenue per hospital bed, implementation costs per unit. Somewhere along the way, I became exactly the kind of person I used to hate." Marcus nodded slowly. He understood that kind of drift, the way a person could lose themselves so gradually that they didn't notice until they were already gone. He had done it himself once, back in his drinking days, when he had let his family slip away one bottle at a time. "So what's got you driving through the desert alone?" he asked. "Running from something or running to something?" Victoria let out a small, bitter laugh. "Both, maybe. There's a hospital in Flagstaff. Small place, rural, serves mostly low-income families. They've been trying to implement our system for 2 years, but they can't afford the full package. Corporate keeps telling me to cut them loose, focus on the profitable clients. And I've been listening. I've been signing off on decisions that would have made my younger self sick. But you're driving to Flagstaff now." "I was supposed to be there 3 hours ago. The hospital administrator, a woman named Grace, she called me personally last week. Told me that a child in their pediatric unit almost received the wrong medication because their outdated system failed. The nurse caught it in time, but barely. Grace said she didn't know who else to call. She said she remembered meeting me at a conference 10 years ago, back when I still talked about why I started this company." Marcus finished securing the tape and closed the hood. "Try starting it now." Victoria climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, then caught. The temperature gauge stayed steady, at least for the moment. "It'll hold," Marcus said, "but don't push it too hard. And keep an eye on that gauge." Victoria stepped out of the car and stood facing him. "Thank you. I don't know how to—" "You can thank me by getting to that hospital." She nodded but didn't move toward the car. Something was holding her back, some weight she hadn't yet released. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Go ahead." "Why did you really stop? You could have driven past. Most people would have." Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and cooling sand. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out to the emerging night. "My wife was named Sarah," he said finally. "She passed 3 years ago. Ovarian cancer. Caught it too late because she kept putting off her appointments, kept saying she was too busy. By the time they found it, there wasn't much the doctors could do. I'm so sorry. The last few months, she was in a hospital in Phoenix. Good place, good people. But I remember this one night, she was in so much pain she couldn't sleep. The nurse came in to give her medication, and something went wrong with the system. Took them 45 minutes to sort it out while Sarah just lay there, suffering. 45 minutes that felt like 45 years. Victoria's hand went to her mouth. Oh, God. I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad. I'm telling you because I know why software like yours matters. I've seen what happens when it fails, and I've seen what happens when it works, too. The last 2 weeks of Sarah's life, they got a new system installed. Don't know which company made it, but I know that every time she needed medication, it came right on time. Every time. She was still dying, but at least she wasn't suffering any more than she had to. Tears were streaming down Victoria's face now. She made no move to wipe them away. I stopped because that's what Sarah would have wanted me to do, Marcus continued. She was the one who taught me that kindness isn't weakness. She was the one who showed me that the measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching, but what he does when nobody's looking. Victoria reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cold against his calloused palm. "Come with me," she said. "What?" "To Flagstaff. Come with me to the hospital. I want you to be there when I tell Grace that we're implementing the full system at no cost. I want you to see what your kindness made possible tonight." Marcus shook his head. "That's not necessary. You would have gotten there on your own." "No," Victoria said firmly. "I wouldn't have. I was sitting in this car for 20 minutes before the engine died, trying to convince myself to turn around, telling myself it wasn't my problem, that corporate would handle it, that one small hospital didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I was about to give up. And then I saw your headlight in my rearview mirror, and I thought, if this stranger is willing to stop for me, maybe I should be willing to stop for someone else. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. Every story we tell here reminds you that one small act of kindness can change the world. Subscribe now, so you never miss a moment that restores your faith in humanity. The ride to Flagstaff took 3 hours. Victoria drove slowly, watching her temperature gauge while Marcus followed on his Harley. They stopped twice at gas stations to check the engine and add coolant. Each time they talked a little more, sharing pieces of their lives like travelers who know they may never meet again, but recognize something kindred in each other nonetheless. Marcus learned that Victoria had been married once, briefly, in her 30s. Her husband had wanted her to slow down, to prioritize family over career. She had chosen the company. He had chosen to leave. She didn't blame him. Victoria learned that Marcus had been a mechanic for 30 years before retiring early. He and Sarah had planned to travel the country together, visiting all the places they had talked about but never seen. After she died, he bought the Harley and started making those trips alone, carrying her memory with him like a passenger on the empty seat behind him. She would have loved this road, he said during one of their stops, gesturing at the dark highway stretching toward the horizon. She always said the desert at night looked like another planet, like anything was possible out here. "Maybe it is," Victoria replied. They reached Flagstaff just after 10 o'clock. The hospital was a modest building on the edge of town, its windows glowing with the soft light of a facility that never truly sleeps. Victoria pulled into the parking lot and sat for a moment, her hands still on the wheel. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "Why?" "Because I've spent the last 5 years being someone I don't like. I don't know if I remember how to be anyone else." Marcus pulled his Harley alongside her window. "You want to know a secret?" She looked at him. "Every morning since Sarah died, I wake up, and I don't know who I am anymore. The man I was with her, the man she loved, he feels like a stranger. But then I do something, some small thing, that I know she would have been proud of, and for just a moment, I find him again. That's all any of us can do. One moment at a time." Victoria nodded slowly. Then she opened her door and stepped out into the cool mountain air. The hospital entrance was quiet at this hour. A security guard looked up from his phone as they approached, his expression shifting from boredom to curiosity as he took in the unlikely pair, a woman in a wrinkled designer suit and a bearded biker in leather. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm here to see Grace Williams," Victoria said. "The administrator. Tell her Victoria Chen is here. Tell her I came to keep a promise." The guard made a call, spoke in low tones, then hung up. "She's on her way down." They waited in the lobby, surrounded by the particular silence of hospitals at night. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, mixing with the faint scent of coffee from a vending machine in the corner. Marcus watched Victoria's reflection in the darkened window. She was standing straighter now, some of the weariness lifting from her shoulders. The elevator dinged, and a woman emerged. She was in her 60s with steel gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and the kind of face that had clearly seen both the best and worst of human nature. She walked toward Victoria with measured steps, her expression guarded. "Ms. Chen," she said, "I wasn't sure you were coming." I'm sorry I'm late. I had some car trouble on the way. Grace glanced at Marcus, questions forming in her eyes. Victoria followed her gaze. This is Marcus Cole. He stopped to help me when I was stranded on Highway 89. He's the reason I'm standing here right now. Grace extended her hand to Marcus. Her grip was warm but firm, the handshake of someone who had spent decades solving problems and meeting challenges head-on. Thank you for bringing her to us, Mr. Cole. Just Marcus, and she brought herself. I just helped with the engine. Grace smiled slightly, then turned back to Victoria. Would you like to see the pediatric unit? It's quiet now, most of the children are sleeping, but I think it might help you understand what we're dealing with. They took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was painted with cheerful murals, cartoon animals, and bright landscapes designed to distract young patients from the reality of their surroundings. But even the colorful walls couldn't hide the age of the equipment, the worn tiles, the general sense of a place fighting to maintain dignity with limited resources. Grace stopped outside a room where a nightlight cast soft shadows on the walls. Through the window, Marcus could see a small figure in a hospital bed, connected to monitors that beeped their quiet rhythm. That's Emma, Grace said softly. 8 years old. She's been here for 3 weeks with a severe infection. She's responding well to treatment now, but when she first came in... She paused, composing herself. Our system flagged her for an antibiotic she's allergic to. The warning came up, but it was buried in a dozen other alerts. Alarm fatigue, they call it. When everything is an emergency, nothing is. But someone caught it, Victoria said. Maria, one of our night nurses. She's been here 20 years. She remembered Emma from a previous visit, remembered the allergy. If she hadn't been on shift that night... Grace didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Marcus looked at the sleeping child, at the rise and fall of her small chest, and felt something tighten in his own. He thought of all the children in all the hospitals across the country, all the Emmas whose lives depended on the attention of overworked nurses and the reliability of aging systems. Show me everything, Victoria said. Every problem, every workaround, every system failure. I want to understand exactly what you need. They spent the next 2 hours walking through the hospital. Grace showed them the pharmacy, where medications were still sorted partially by hand because the digital inventory system crashed twice a week. She showed them the records room, where patient files existed in a confusing hybrid of paper and electronic formats. She showed them the nursing stations where staff had developed their own unofficial protocols to compensate for software that couldn't keep up with their needs. Through it all, Victoria listened. She asked questions, took notes on her phone, and never once tried to minimize the problems or offer easy solutions. Marcus watched her transformation with quiet amazement. This was not the defeated woman he had met on the highway. This was someone remembering who she was supposed to be. Near midnight, they sat in Grace's small office, 3 cups of coffee growing cold on the desk between them. The full implementation package would cost approximately $1.2 million, Victoria said. Training, hardware upgrades, ongoing support, everything. That's the standard corporate rate. Grace nodded, her expression carefully neutral. Marcus knew she must have heard numbers like this before, must have done the math 100 times, searching for money that simply wasn't there. But that's not what we're going to do, Victoria continued. I'm sorry? I'm not offering you the standard package, Grace. I'm offering you a partnership. MedSafe will implement the full system at no cost to this hospital. In return, you allow our team to use your facility as a testing ground for our new rural healthcare initiative. Every improvement we make here, every lesson we learn, will help us serve hundreds of hospitals like yours across the country. Grace stared at her. Ms. Chen, I don't understand. Why would you do this? Victoria glanced at Marcus before answering. Because I met someone tonight who reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Because I've spent too many years chasing the wrong metrics, and I'm tired of not recognizing myself in the mirror. And because there's an 8-year-old girl down the hall who deserves better than a system that almost failed her. Grace's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she made no effort to hide them. Do you know how long I've been trying to find someone who would listen? How many phone calls, how many proposals, how many rejections? I know, Victoria said quietly, and I'm sorry it took me so long to hear you. They talked for another hour, working out preliminary details, making plans for the weeks ahead. Marcus sat quietly, content to witness this moment of transformation. He thought about Sarah, about how she always believed that good things came from good actions, that the universe had a way of connecting people who needed to find each other. When they finally emerged from the hospital, the first hints of dawn were lightening the eastern sky. The air was cold and clean, carrying the scent of pine trees from the mountains that surrounded the town. "Where will you go now?" Victoria asked Marcus. He shrugged. "Haven't decided. That's the beauty of the road. Don't need to know where you're going until you get there." "Stay," she said suddenly. "At least for a few days. I have to head back to Phoenix tomorrow, but I'd like to see you again. There's something I want to show you." "What's that?" "My mother. She lives in Scottsdale now. She's 83 years old, still sharp as ever, and she's been telling me for years that I've lost my way. I think she'd like to meet the man who helped me find it again." Marcus considered this. He had no particular destination in mind, no schedule to keep. And there was something about this woman this night that felt unfinished. "All right," he said. "I'll stay." Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. It transformed her face, making her look younger, softer, more like the idealistic young coder who had once dreamed of saving lives from her garage. "There's a motel on the other side of town," she said. "Nothing fancy, but it's clean. I'll text you the address for my mother's place. Come by around noon on Sunday." She reached out and hugged him then, a quick embrace that somehow conveyed more gratitude than any words could. Then she got into her battered Mercedes and drove away, the sunrise painting her windshield gold. Marcus stood alone in the parking lot for a long moment, watching her taillights disappear. Then he climbed onto his Harley and started the engine. The familiar rumble felt different somehow, like the beginning of something rather than the continuation of endless wandering. 2 days later, Marcus pulled up to a modest ranch-style house in a quiet Scottsdale neighborhood. The yard was immaculately maintained, with desert landscaping that somehow felt both wild and carefully tended. Wind chimes hung from the porch, their gentle music mixing with the distant hum of Sunday afternoon traffic. Victoria met him at the door. She was dressed casually now, jeans and a simple blouse, her corporate armor set aside. She looked rested, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Come in," she said. "Mom's been waiting all morning." The house smelled of sandalwood and green tea. The walls were covered with photographs, a young Victoria in a graduation gown, family gatherings, vacation snapshots. But the largest picture, hanging above the fireplace, showed an elderly Chinese woman standing next to a much younger Victoria. They were both wearing hard hats and standing in front of a building under construction. A banner in the background read, "MedSafe Systems Grand Opening." "That was 15 years ago," Victoria said, following his gaze. "The day we moved into our first real office, Mom flew out from San Francisco just to be there. She was the one who cut the ribbon." "Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She is, and she's also not very patient, so we should probably not keep her waiting any longer." They walked through the house to a sun-drenched back patio, where an elderly woman sat in a cushioned chair, a pot of tea on the table beside her. She was small and delicate, with white hair pinned back from a face that radiated quiet strength. Her eyes, dark and sharp, fixed on Marcus as he stepped outside. "So you're the one who stopped for my daughter," she said. Her English was accented but clear, each word precisely chosen. "Yes, ma'am. Marcus Cole." "Sit, sit." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Victoria tells me you're a mechanic." "Retired now, but yes, ma'am, 30 years. "Good. A man who works with his hands. A man who understands how things fit together." She poured tea into a ceramic cup and slid it toward him. "Do you know the story of why Victoria started her company?" "She told me some of it. About your illness, the medication error." The old woman nodded slowly. What she probably did not tell you is that I begged her not to pursue it. I said, Victoria, you are angry now, but anger is not a foundation. If you build a company on anger, it will only bring you pain. She didn't listen, of course. She never has listened to her mother. Victoria made a soft sound of protest, but the old woman waved her off. I was wrong, she continued. Or rather, I was partly wrong. The anger was not good fuel, no. But underneath the anger was something else. Something better. The desire to protect people, to prevent suffering. That is what she built her company on, even if she didn't know it at the time. I think she knows it now, Marcus said. The old woman's eyes crinkled with something like approval. Yes, and that is because of you. Because you stopped when you didn't have to. Because you showed her that kindness still exists in strangers. I just fixed a radiator hose. No, Mr. Cole. You reminded my daughter who she used to be. You cannot put a price on that. She leaned forward, studying him with an intensity that made him feel like he was being read down to his bones. Victoria also told me about your wife. About Sarah. Marcus felt his throat tighten. She was a good woman. I am sure she was, and I am sure she would be proud of what you did the other night. Not the mechanical work. The other thing, the stopping, the staying, the listening. He couldn't speak for a moment. The grief that had been his constant companion for 3 years suddenly felt lighter, shared somehow, held by these two women he barely knew, but who had somehow seen right through him. She would have liked you, he finally managed. Both of you. Victoria reached over and placed her hand on his arm. I've been thinking about something, she said. Something I wanted to ask you. Go ahead. MedSafe is launching a new initiative. We're going to identify hospitals in underserved areas, just like the one in Flagstaff, and implement our systems at reduced or no cost. I need someone to help me find those hospitals, someone who knows the roads, who understands the places that corporations usually overlook, someone who knows how to talk to regular people and really listen to what they need. Marcus frowned. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose. You've spent 3 years driving across this country looking for something without knowing what it is. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is how you honor Sarah's memory. By helping other families avoid the kind of suffering you both experienced. He sat back in his chair, the weight of her words settling over him. Through the back windows of the house, he could see his Harley parked in the driveway, gleaming in the afternoon sun. That motorcycle had been his freedom and his prison, his escape and his torment. He had ridden it across thousands of miles, always moving, never arriving. I don't know anything about corporate work, he said. I don't need someone who knows corporate work. I need someone who knows people. Someone who can walk into a struggling hospital and see what's really going on, not just what's in the reports. Someone who won't be intimidated by bureaucracy or fooled by fancy presentations. Victoria paused. I need someone like the man who stopped for me when I was broken down on the side of the road. Victoria's mother spoke then, her voice soft but firm. In Chinese philosophy, we speak of Yuanfen. It is the idea that relationships are governed by a force beyond our control, that certain people are destined to meet and change each other's lives. The night you stopped for my daughter, that was Yuanfen. What you do with it now is your choice. Marcus looked from the old woman to Victoria and back again. He thought about Sarah, about the promise he had made at her bedside to keep living, to keep trying to find meaning in a world that often seemed devoid of it. He thought about all the nights on the road, all the diners and motels and empty miles, searching for something he couldn't name. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was what he had been looking for all along. I'd want to keep traveling, he said slowly. Keep riding. I can't just sit in an office. I wouldn't dream of putting you behind a desk, Victoria replied. You'd be out in the field, visiting hospitals, talking to administrators and staff, identifying where we can help the most. You'd be on your bike more than ever. And the pay? Victoria named a figure that made him blink. Plus expenses, plus healthcare, plus a company card for gas. I don't need all that. Maybe not, but you've earned it. She leaned forward, her expression earnest. Please, Marcus, let me do something to thank you. Let me give you a way to help people the way you helped me. He was quiet for a long moment, feeling the warmth of the Arizona sun, listening to the wind chimes sing their gentle song. Then he extended his hand. All right, Miss Chen, you've got yourself a deal. Her face broke into that same transformative smile he had seen outside the Flagstaff Hospital. She shook his hand firmly, then surprised him by pulling him into another hug. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for stopping. When they broke apart, Victoria's mother was smiling too, a quiet expression of satisfaction that suggested she had somehow known this would happen all along. Now, the old woman said, reaching for the teapot, let me tell you about my daughter when she was young, before she became so serious, before she forgot how to laugh. You should know who you're working for, Mr. Cole. And so they sat together in the golden afternoon light. Three strangers brought together by a broken radiator hose and the simple act of stopping to help, talking and laughing until the sun dipped below the mountains and the stars came out to watch. If you've ever felt lost, if you've ever wondered whether kindness still matters in this world, leave a comment right now saying, "Kindness found me." Because sometimes the universe sends us exactly the person we need, exactly when we need them. Type it now and let the world know that compassion still has the power to change lives. 3 months later, Marcus pulled his Harley into the parking lot of a small hospital in rural New Mexico. The building was old, its paint peeling in the harsh desert sun, but there were flowers planted by the entrance and a banner that read, St. Anthony's Regional Medical Center, serving our community since 1962. He removed his helmet and studied the facade. This was the 4th hospital on his list this week, the 12th since he had started working for Victoria's new outreach program. Each one told a similar story: dedicated staff, limited resources, aging technology, and a desperate need for help that seemed forever out of reach. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. How does it look? He typed back, like all the others, hanging on by their fingernails. That's what I was afraid of. Get me everything. I'll call you tonight. Marcus pocketed his phone and walked toward the entrance. The automatic doors wheezed open, releasing a wave of cool, antiseptic air. The lobby was modest but clean, with faded motivational posters on the walls and a reception desk staffed by a young woman with tired eyes and a genuine smile. Can I help you? She asked. I'm here to see Mrs. Rodriguez, the administrator. Name's Marcus Cole. The woman's expression shifted slightly, recognition flickering in her eyes. Oh, you're the one from MedSafe. She's been talking about your visit all week. Let me call up. While he waited, Marcus studied the lobby. Through a glass partition, he could see the emergency waiting room. An elderly couple sat in plastic chairs, the woman holding an ice pack to the man's hand. A young mother tried to soothe a crying toddler. A teenage boy sat alone in the corner, his leg in a makeshift splint, trying to look brave and failing. This was the front line of healthcare in America. Not the gleaming research hospitals of major cities or the state-of-the-art facilities favored by insurance companies. These were the places where regular people came when they were hurt or sick, where overworked nurses and underpaid doctors did their best with whatever they had. Sarah would have understood. She had worked as a receptionist at a clinic for years before they met. She knew what it meant to stretch resources, to make do, to find hope in the smallest victories. Mr. Cole? He turned to find a woman in her 50s approaching. She had the look of someone who had spent decades fighting battles that never ended, but whose spirit remained unbroken. Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine. I'm Elena Rodriguez. Thank you for coming all this way. Thank you for having me. She led him through the hospital, showing him the same familiar struggles he had seen in Flagstaff and every facility since. Outdated computers that took minutes to load patient records. Medication dispensing systems that required manual override more often than not. Staff who had developed workarounds and shortcuts just to get through each shift. But there was something else here too. Something he had learned to recognize in his travels. Despite everything, despite the limitations and frustrations and endless challenges, these people cared. They showed up every day because their community needed them. They stayed late and came in early and never stopped trying to do better. How long have you been administrator here? Marcus asked as they walked through the pediatric ward. 22 years. Started as a nurse, worked my way up. This hospital delivered both my children. It saved my husband's life after his heart attack. This place is part of me. It shows. Elena stopped walking and turned to face him. Mr. Cole, I've been hearing about what MedSafe is doing, about the hospitals you've helped. When I got the call that someone was coming to assess our facility, I didn't dare believe it could be real. We've been forgotten by so many people for so long. You're not forgotten anymore, Marcus said. That's why I'm here. Over the next 2 days, Marcus documented everything. He photographed equipment, interviewed staff, reviewed incident reports, and compiled a comprehensive assessment of what St. Anthony's needed. The work was tedious but meaningful, each data point representing a real patient whose care could be improved. On his last evening in town, Elena invited him to dinner at her home. Her husband, Carlos, had prepared enchiladas from a family recipe, and their dining room was filled with the warm chaos of 3 generations gathered around a single table. Grandchildren ran through the house laughing while adults talked and argued and teased each other with the easy familiarity of people who had loved each other through everything life could throw at them. Marcus sat quietly, absorbing the warmth of this family that had welcomed him so completely. It reminded him of holidays with Sarah, of the home they had built together, of all the dinners they would never share again. You're far away, Elena said softly, sitting down beside him as the dishes were cleared. Just remembering. Victoria told me about your wife. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. She would have loved this. The food, the family, all of it. She always said the best meals were the ones where you couldn't hear yourself think because everyone was talking at once. Elena smiled. She sounds like she would have fit right in. She would have. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Carlos try to teach his grandson a card trick while the boy's mother rolled her eyes affectionately. Can I ask you something personal? Elena said. Go ahead. When you lost her, how did you keep going? How did you find a reason to wake up every day? Marcus considered the question carefully. It was one he had asked himself countless times in those dark months after Sarah's passing. I didn't, at first, he admitted. For a long time, I was just going through the motions, riding my bike across the country, pretending I was searching for something when really I was just running away. Then I met Victoria, and she gave me a purpose. She showed me that the best way to honor Sarah's memory was to help other people avoid the kind of suffering we went through. And that's enough? Most days. Some days it's hard. Some days I wake up and the grief is so heavy I can barely breathe. But then I think about the hospitals we've helped, the patients whose care will be better because of what we're doing, and it gets a little easier. Sarah would have wanted me to keep fighting. So that's what I do. Elena reached over and squeezed his hand. Thank you for fighting for us. The next morning, Marcus rode out of town as the sun rose over the desert. His saddlebags were full of notes and photographs, evidence of another hospital that deserved better, another community that refused to give up. He called Victoria from a rest stop in Arizona. St. Anthony's needs everything, he said. But they've got heart. The staff there, they're the real deal. They deserve our best effort. Then they'll get it, Victoria replied. I've already talked to the board. We're expanding the rural initiative, 15 more hospitals by the end of the year, and I want you to help me choose them. That's a lot of miles. Is that a complaint? Marcus looked out at the highway stretching toward the horizon, the ribbon of asphalt that had become both his home and his purpose. No, he said. That's a promise. 6 months after their first meeting on Highway 89, Marcus and Victoria stood together at a press conference in Phoenix. Behind them, a banner proclaimed the launch of the MedSafe Rural Healthcare Initiative, a program that would eventually bring modern medical technology to over 50 underserved hospitals across the American Southwest. Victoria spoke about her mother's illness, about the medication error that had inspired her to start the company, about how she had lost her way and found it again thanks to the kindness of a stranger. She introduced Marcus to the assembled reporters, describing him not as an employee but as a partner, a friend, and a reminder that the best business decisions are the ones that come from the heart. When it was his turn to speak, Marcus kept it simple. "My wife Sarah taught me that you measure a life by the lives you touch," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "She's been gone 3 years now, but every hospital we help, every patient whose care gets better because of what we're doing here, that's her legacy too. I'm just the guy on the motorcycle. She's the reason I keep riding." After the press conference, Victoria found him alone on the building's rooftop, looking out at the city lights beginning to flicker on as evening approached. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just thinking about how strange life is. 6 months ago, I was a nobody on a highway, and you were a CEO who had forgotten why she started her company. Now look at us. Partners in crime. Partners in something, anyway." Victoria stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "I talked to Grace yesterday," she said. "The Flagstaff Hospital is seeing incredible results. Medication errors down by 92%. Staff satisfaction up across the board. Emma, the little girl who almost got the wrong antibiotic, she went home last month, fully recovered. That's good. That's really good. It wouldn't have happened without you. You know that, right?" Marcus shook his head. "It wouldn't have happened without you making the decision to help. I just fixed your car." "You fixed a lot more than my car, Marcus Cole." They stood in silence for a while longer, two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, who had somehow managed to transform their own pain into something that helped others. "What's next?" Marcus finally asked. Victoria smiled. "I got a call today from a hospital administrator in Montana. Small town, population 800, nearest major medical center 3 hours away. They've been operating with technology from the 90s. They need help." Montana. That's a long ride. Too long? Marcus thought about it. He thought about the open road, about the mountains he hadn't seen yet, about all the small towns and struggling hospitals waiting to be found. He thought about Sarah, about the life they had planned and the life he was building in her absence. He thought about the strange path that had led him from a broken-down Mercedes on a desert highway to this rooftop in Phoenix, standing next to a woman who had become one of his closest friends. "No such thing as too long," he said. "When do I leave?" "Monday morning." "Then I guess I better get some rest." But he didn't move, and neither did she. They just stood there together, watching the last light fade from the sky, grateful for the unexpected grace that had brought them to this moment. 1 year later, Marcus attended the groundbreaking ceremony for a new wing at St. Anthony's Regional Medical Center in New Mexico. Elena Rodriguez stood at the podium, her eyes shining with tears as she thanked the community, the staff, and the partners who had made this expansion possible. "A year ago," she said, "we were struggling just to keep our doors open. Today, we're building for the future. And it all started because one man on a motorcycle stopped to help a stranger on the side of the road. That act of kindness set in motion a chain of events that none of us could have predicted. It reminded us that compassion is contagious, that generosity multiplies, that when we take care of each other, miracles become possible." She looked directly at Marcus, who stood in the back of the crowd, trying to remain inconspicuous and failing. "Marcus Cole," she continued, "you probably don't think of yourself as a hero, but to this hospital, to this community, to all the patients whose lives will be saved because of what you helped build here, you are exactly that. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for caring. Thank you for showing us that kindness still exists in this world." The crowd applauded, and Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment. He had never been comfortable with attention, preferring to do his work quietly and let others take the credit. But as he looked around at the smiling faces, at the doctors and nurses and administrators who had dedicated their lives to healing others, he understood that this moment wasn't really about him. It was about Sarah. It was about Victoria's mother. It was about every patient who had ever suffered because the system failed them. It was about the simple truth that one small act of kindness could ripple outward in ways impossible to predict or measure. After the ceremony, Marcus walked to his Harley, which was parked in the shade of a mesquite tree. The bike was dusty from the road, its chrome dulled by thousands of miles of desert sun and mountain rain. But it still ran strong, still carried him wherever he needed to go. He pulled out his phone and called Victoria. "How was the ceremony?" she asked. "Emotional. Elena made me cry. Not that I'll ever admit that. Your secret's safe with me. What's next on the agenda?" "I was thinking of heading up to Colorado. There's a hospital in Pueblo that reached out last week. They're in bad shape." "I know. I've already started the paperwork. You should have everything you need by the time you get there. You're too efficient. You know that?" "It's been mentioned once or twice." Marcus laughed, a sound that had become more common in the past year. Laughter had been rare after Sarah's death, but slowly, gradually, it had returned. Not because the grief had faded, but because he had found a way to carry it alongside joy rather than instead of it. "Hey, Victoria." "Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For giving me a reason to keep going." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for stopping, Marcus. For being the kind of person who stops." He ended the call and strapped on his helmet. The engine roared to life, its familiar vibration traveling through his body like a heartbeat. He pulled onto the highway and pointed his bike north, toward the mountains, toward the next hospital, toward the next opportunity to make a difference. The road stretched out before him, endless and full of possibility. Somewhere up ahead, there were people who needed help, communities that had been forgotten, stories waiting to be written. And Marcus Cole, the biker who stopped for strangers, would be there to meet them. Because that's what Sarah would have wanted. Because that's what kindness demanded. Because sometimes the most important journey you can take is the one that leads you to someone else's door. The sun was warm on his back, the wind was in his face, and for the first time in a very long time, Marcus Cole knew exactly where he belonged. Not in any particular place, but on the road, in service, making a difference one hospital, one patient, one act of compassion at a time. And that, he realized, was more than enough. That was everything. If you watched this far, it's because this story touched your heart. Leave a comment saying, "I watched this far," so I can get to know you and know who really loves the stories on this channel. Your engagement means the world to me and helps bring more stories of hope and compassion to people who need them. And if this video moved you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness still exists in this world. Every like, every share, every comment helps spread the message that one person can make a difference. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of courage, compassion, and the extraordinary power of ordinary people choosing to do the right thing. Because in a world that often seems cold and indifferent, we need these reminders. We need to know that strangers still stop for each other on empty highways. We need to believe that kindness is stronger than cruelty, that compassion outlasts indifference, that love in all its forms never truly dies. Single biker stops to help a stranded CEO. Her secret reason leaves him in tears. But the real secret, the one that matters most, is this. We all have the power to change someone's life. All we have to do is stop. All we have to do is care. All we have to do is remember that every person we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about, and a single act of kindness might be exactly what they need to keep going. So the next time you see someone broken down on the side of the road, whether literally or figuratively, ask yourself, will you be the one who drives past, or will you be the one who stops? The choice is yours. And it might just change everything.